And so we sort of thought we could continue on and do this like in a more formulaic way, and sort of make it a little more official and just kind of do it and capitalize off of the brand of it. Or we could just take the sort of artistic high road, I think is how we looked at it, and just say, this was amazing, and let's not like tarnish this. All of those videos will be there forever. Let's just hit the pause button. And if in the air, like that energy actually comes back and we actually all want to get back together to do it, I think the videos would be incredible again. But we just didn't want to start churning them out like a factory, I think the magic would have disappeared.
You have almost certainly seen or heard or both today's guest in some capacity the last few years. What an interesting artist, and he's kind of had like 3 full careers in just a matter of a few years. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we're chatting today with Michael Thurber. So Michael, among the many things he does, he co-founded the incredibly popular YouTube channel CDZA. So we talk about that. You've almost certainly seen some of these videos. The story of the bass is very cool. We'll link up to that. And they're all very cool, actually. After that, so that's career 1. After that, Michael went on to play bass on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. What? How cool is that? So there's another career right there, right? And now he's moved into composing. And he's always written, as you'll hear in this, but he has written critically acclaimed music for the Royal Shakespeare Company. He hosts his Thurber Theater. Just such an inspiring artist. And I'd like to thank Lyris of D'Addario Strings for setting this up. It was so cool to chat with Michael live, and we did this at the D'Addario showroom in Manhattan. Very cool space, by the way. So you'll learn about Michael. You'll hear a little bit of his music here. And I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, D'Addario Strings, for one. Also, A440 Violin Shop, Steve Swan String Bass, Upton Bass, and the Bass Violin Shop. You'll hear more from them later, but let's dig into this conversation with Michael Thurber.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So I thought, it's like, where can we even start with Michael Thurber? So maybe an interesting place to start would be just, can you describe some of the various roles that you're inhabiting right now, and then we can go back in time?
Oh, yeah.
What are you spending your time doing these days?
Oh, man, if I can remember them all. Mostly what I'm doing right now is writing. I am writing a lot of music for theater, so not only involved on the orchestrational side, but the actual songs, the lyrics and everything. And that's sort of my main emphasis right now. I'm still playing a lot. My main outlet for playing is in a duo with the violinist Tessa Lark, which is amazing. We've been going all around the country this year playing on different series. That's sort of like a combination of original music that we're writing for the group and transcriptions of Bach inventions and a few other Bach pieces, and also arrangements of original bluegrass tunes, because she's from Kentucky, and that's a big part of her heritage. So it's a very diverse, eclectic program. And then just last week, I got out of the studio producing a record for the jazz singer Lauren Henderson, who's an incredible vocalist. She divides her time between Miami and Boston and New York, and she sings half in Spanish and half in English. And so we had been doing a lot of projects together. She had been performing on a series that I do at Joe's Pub called Thurber Theater. And we had started to write a lot of music together, and the vibe was just so amazing, and the music was coming together so well, we decided to make a record out of it all. So we just finished tracking all of that on Wednesday, and hopefully we'll get that out in the next 6 or 7 months. But it's very, very beautiful music. So that's going on. And I'm teaching a little bit at NYU now.
Great.
At the Clive Davis School, which is really cool.
What are you teaching?
I teach a really cool class. It's called Artist Development. And so it's basically a way for the students to sort of not only figure themselves out creatively, but sort of organize themselves creatively. So we do a lot of exercises about sort of unearthing their various musical influences throughout their life and drawing common denominators between all the things that inspire them musically and non-musically, and then starting to kind of create a path out of that. And then about halfway through the semester, we get way deeper into business side of things and sort of how to I hate to use this word, but sort of how to brand what you're doing and what you're interested in so that you can kind of make your own place in the industry. And it's a really cool class because all the students at Clive have different musical interests. So some are looking to be like an A&R person. Some are looking to be singer-songwriters. Others are producers, so everybody's involved in music, but in different capacities. So that's fun because there's sort of this energy where everybody's learning from each other, Wow. Yeah.
I'd like to take that class.
Yeah. Hey, me too. I tell the kids, I'm going to do all of this with you. I'm like, this work never ends,
And then on the writing side, it's just really interesting to see how you're unfolding and writing concertos that are being performed all over the place. You're writing music for the Shakespeare, remind me?
Yeah. Royal Shakespeare Company.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's taken on this incredibly, exciting,
journey
dimension. Yeah. So maybe we could get into that journey. And then, of course, I want to talk about Cadenza Collective. And people who are listening to this have almost certainly seen this epically good video of the history of the bass. And I want to get into all that, but let's go back. And born in Oklahoma and then growing up just outside of Chicago, Northwest Indiana.
That's right.
So just talk about how you got into the bass those early years.
Yeah, for sure. You got the whole bio down, man. I got into the bass just through public school. I was going to middle school in Northwest Indiana, in Portage, Indiana, a small town there, and which because you used to live in Chicago. And there was just the choose your own instrument day in orchestra. And so I went in, and for whatever reason, I was drawn to the bass, and just started that way. And then very quickly became interested in it. I mean, it's really a testimony to public schools having a music program, because to me, it was just an incredible outlet I just couldn't believe that there was a block in the day at school where I could play music. Yeah. It was just mind-blowing concept to me, and it made me so happy, and it gave me something to be excited about every day. So that was really how it started. And then from there, I got more and more serious about it very quickly. And by the time I was in, I think it was 7th or 8th grade, I remember very vividly coming home from school and telling my parents, I want to be a professional musician. And luckily, they didn't know what that meant. So they were like, great, that sounds good. Because I think if they would have been in the music industry, they would have been like, don't do it or something, But they were like, that sounds awesome. So they were always very supportive. And then I got more and more serious about it. And by the time I was a freshman in high school, I was just going to the public school. I started to get frustrated because I felt like there weren't enough outlets in the town to be able to really get serious. And I wanted to practice more, and the school day was long. And so I ended up leaving school to homeschool for a little while. And I did a year of homeschooling, and then I found out about Interlaken. And I wound up heading up to Interlaken for my last 2 years of high school. And that was really when it really started to happen. I think if I never would have gone to Interlaken, I definitely would have never gone beyond that into, Juilliard or into New York. That was really formative for me. And then once I got here, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory in this city. There's just so many amazing artists. You're just endlessly inspired and amazed and overwhelmed, so you just jump in and start going,
If we go back to those Interlaken, and were you studying with maybe Derek Weller?
I sure was.
Okay, there we go.
Shout out to Derek Weller. Derek Weller is an incredible teacher and just an incredible man. I really, really love him. And he was formative for me. I mean, he was one of the first people that I think, saw truly how serious I was. And he, all of the major repertoire I learned from Derek, all the Bottesini stuff, Kusevitsky, the Bach cello suites, and he studied with Stuart Sankey. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the fingerings and a lot of the wisdom and stuff all came directly from Stuart Sankey, with Derek's own sort of brilliant ingenuity to it, So yeah, he's an amazing person. I love him so much.
Yeah, shout out to Derek for sure.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
He is.
Were you into theater? Were you into what outside of the bass? Because I just look at you and what you've done in post Interlochen, and what were you into besides practicing your standard rep on the bass in those early years?
I was always into a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
That started very young.
Okay.
So I was playing a lot of bass guitar at Interlochen as well. I was already writing then a lot. It wasn't my major, bass performance was, but I was allowed to audit all of the music composition classes with the composers, which was amazing. In the music theory classes, I took as many of them as I could. And they were very good about that. I mean, it's a very unique place in that way, different from a lot of college curriculums. They're very open to you doing different things and very open to you, taking electives and kind of trying to go in your own direction. So I was already doing a lot of that. I was playing in the big band, playing in the jazz combo, had a funk band with my friends that we'd play with on the weekends, writing music. At that time, less songs and more like concert music type of stuff and like jazz tunes. But then when I got to New York, that was really when the theater part of it started. So in New York, I had a band with one of my classmates from Interlochen, and we were writing a lot of songs and got more into the song form and lyrics. And through that is what made me discover theater, because a lot of the songs that I was writing, I would realize, like lyrically and structurally, they had sort of a narrative to them. I would always gravitate towards these very strong narrative type of songs. And I kind of unearthed over time that was from being really into musicals. When I was a kid, I saw Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in Chicago.
Okay.
I think it was at the Goodman or something.
Sure.
Yeah. And that was like very formative for me. And watching all of the movies of the classic ones like Music Man and My Fair Lady and all that stuff. And then also when Nightmare Before Christmas came out, Tim Burton, which is like an animated musical, I was mind blown by that. And so I think all of that was always sort of in the back of my head. So when I really decided to go to song specifically, that felt like the most natural place, and it's like anything. Once you kind of put that out there into the world, you start to attract different types of people and different types of opportunities, and I sort of fell into theater in that way and met early on a few people that I really connected with, a director in particular, and we just started doing a whole bunch of projects, and then from there it just started growing,
All this while you're at Juilliard.
Yeah. A lot of this was while I was at school. Yeah. And then I would say it really didn't take solid root until post school. But a lot of it was beginning in school. I mean, that was a real struggle because you're in New York and there's so much going on, but you're also in school, and so that was a real balancing act.
Well, I'm sure. Well, and when you got to Juilliard, what was bass performance your major?
Yeah.
What were you thinking at that time? Or you must have been thinking something, like if you were 18-year-old Michael or whatever age you were when you got to Juilliard, what were you thinking? Oh, I want to get an orchestra job? Were you thinking, I don't know what I want to do? What were you thinking?
I knew I didn't want an orchestra job. I knew that. I knew I wanted to kind of do my own thing, but I didn't really know exactly what that was yet. I kind of had inklings, but I didn't know, and I also didn't know that was necessarily even an option. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know that how to be able to do your own thing, like logistically, and how to sort of structure that and make a living doing that. And so, I knew vaguely, but I didn't really know, like I didn't really understand. I mean, it was much more, sort of, I guess, immature or basic than that. I mean, I kind of just had a list of like things I wanted to try to do before I died. And I was just like, well, I want to just get this done. And so I kind of just started in on the list, and then all of the sort of formalities just sort of fell in place around it, you know.
On the list was I want to make videos that get millions and millions of views. Was that one of the things on the list?
No.
Okay, so
that wasn't.
How the heck? And I'd love to get into some of the details because I'm sitting here watching through. I knew that Michael and I were going to chat and I watched back through the history of the bass, and then I started going through all these other. Is it CDZA or Cadenza Collective, or how do you?
So yeah, CDZA is what we went by for short.
Okay.
The full name was Collective Cadenza, but everybody thought that it was credenza, like a couch. All the non-musicians, and we were like, that's too confusing. And also, the search engine optimization was not as. I mean, Google worked different at that time, so it was not as good to type in Collective Cadenza. But CDZA, that's not a real word.
Right.
So as soon as you type that in, everything would come up. So we were like, let's do that.
Okay, going back to branding.
There you go.
That's
there you go. Yeah, but it was still so weird, like, because this would always happen. Wherever we'd go, everybody would be like, so what are you guys called? Like, what is this? But it kind of actually worked to our advantage, you know?
This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass, which is home to the largest collection of double basses on the West Coast between Los Angeles and Canada. That's a lot of miles, folks. Steve's showroom is outstanding. Absolutely worth a visit. It's located just south of San Francisco Airport, SFO, and he has about 70 basses on display. And these basses range from student entry-level instruments all the way to the finest professional instruments. I've sent so many students and referred so many people to Steve's shop. He really does great work. And if you're looking for a bass, you're going to find one that suits your needs, your playing needs, and your budgetary needs for sure. SteveSwanStringBass.com is where you can go. And thank you, Steve, for sponsoring the podcast. This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. When you pull the string through the peg, twist it around itself a few times before continuing to wind. This pulls more of the string through the peg neatly, and it decreases the likelihood of the string falling out of tension. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Okay, so this project that truly remarkable, like the number of people involved in this and the history of wooing men and all these great videos. You know, my wife and I were just watching through, and I'm thinking, dang, are there 0 cuts in these things? Are they all?
They're all live.
Oh my good. Okay, so maybe how did this idea start? Talk about the genesis of CDZA.
Yeah, so the genesis is really from one of my good friends who's a digital marketing guy. He's really like a digital storyteller. He makes videos, but through that he's gotten deeply involved in marketing and working with like major corporate clients. And he's doing that at a very high level these days. But his name's Joe, and in meeting him, that was really the genesis of it. So he was always like a closeted classical music aficionado. He loved music, and he plays piano very well, but not as a profession. And he was just always really interested in musicians, and he had never really met or hung out with a lot of people that played music for a living or that came up through the conservatory scene and were really serious about music. And so he and I met through a mutual friend, and he came to a show that I was doing, and he said, man, I've always had this idea to make this video that documents the history of lyrics that aren't lyrics. And he kind of told me about it, and we both thought it was like the stupidest idea ever, but we really enjoyed each other. And so we were like, well, let's just do this. So we got together one night and we're hanging out, and we put together a list of all of the songs that we could think of throughout like the zeitgeist of pop music, put them in chronological order, and then I arranged them all and just found like a really haphazard kind of crazy way to smash from one song to the other. And then I called John, my friend, a piano player, who later gave me a job on The Late Show. And we found a great singer on YouTube named Jane Louie, who has an amazing following on YouTube and just a really great vibe. And we thought she'd be perfect for it. And so the three of us got together in a studio my friend ran a studio that was in the old Quad building, not far from here in 47th Street. And so we all got together and recorded this thing in like 2.5 hours, and then left and went and played gigs that night. And the next day we woke up and it had so many views. And we were just like, whoa, like none of us were really expecting that, you know. Joe had already had some success with popular YouTube videos prior to that point, but nothing quite like this. It just took off immediately. And so right around that time, a few opportunities fell in place, like with YouTube, to kind of get some support from them. And we decided that we wanted to make more and more of these videos. So that's really how it was born. It was born, you know, from Joe sort of floating a crazy idea to me and then sort of going from there. And then the third partner was Matt, the guy that ran all the production of all the videos and ran the studio. And it was just it was really a beautiful energy that was in the air at that time, you know, and we called ourselves, you know, musical experimenters. And that really truly was what it was. I mean, we tried to never repeat ourselves. Every video was done with this energy of just whatever, like, let's just see what happens. Let's just go for it. You know, they were all done live and they were all done in one take. That was like part of the rule of the channel. And so that would create a crazy energy in the studio too, because we'd be trying to do these insane medleys with like sometimes really big groups of musicians,
right,
and props and cameras and lighting and stuff, but we would have to do it in one take.
It just boggles the mind how that can even be done. Like I watching through like your bass video, you know, you start on gamba and then you go through and then you get and so you had to have rehearsed these videos, right? What was that?
We would rehearse in the studio. So we would get the studio for the day and we would always shoot 2 videos in one day.
No.
So we'd rehearse for about 3 hours and then do the video and then take a lunch break and then rehearse for about 3 hours and do the video. So the history of guitar solos and the history of bass were both shot on the same day. We did the history of bass first and then we did the history of guitar solo second. And all of the videos, I mean, I think I could probably remember. I mean, 2 were always shot in every session because we wanted to save money, you know? So yeah, so we'd show up and we'd rehearse. And I mean, really the rehearsing honestly would not take that much time because the musicians are all incredibly talented. The thing that would take the most time was the research. You know, for every one of those scripts, for every video, but especially for the instrumental series where we did the history of different instruments, we spent so much time. You know, I would spend, you know, I don't know, 50, 100 hours or something, you know, researching all the different instruments and trying to create a narrative out of it, because there's so many things that you could say about each one of those players or each one of those eras of music. I mean, you could have, you know, 5 videos just about any one of those bass players, you know, and there's a lot of people that we didn't get to, but that's sort of also the joy, the challenge, but also the joy of it is you're trying to do it as quickly as possible. One thing for each of these people, you know, just one thing that made them such a touchstone in the history of the instrument. So yeah, that's what takes a long time. But then once you shoot it, then it's up and there's no editing. So it's pretty quick after that. Matt would mix the sound and then we'd upload it, you know?
And these were mostly being made, it was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, they were mostly made in 2012 and 2013, I believe.
Okay.
Those are the 2 years that we were really doing it full time.
Okay. And that was what you were doing with your time, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
If you're taking 50, 100 hours to research, you were all in on the videos.
We were all in, and we were able to, which, I mean, what a blessing, you know, and we were able to do it all, the 3 of us, full time. And so we did it for 2 years, and then we sort of, you know, I get messages still to this day on Instagram all the time of people saying, "What happened to CDZA? Is it coming back?" It definitely might come back. I would never say never. What happened really was when I got the gig at the Royal Shakespeare Company. That was an opportunity to write, you know, completely original music, which was something that I was always doing on the side. But with CDZA, it was always mashups and always medleys. And that's beautiful. I mean, it's amazing. What's amazing about that is that it's extremely relatable. which is why I think it became as popular as it did, is that, you know, there's something in there for everybody. Everybody knows those songs. So the joy of the video becomes watching what are they going to do with these songs that we know so well already. But I think for me, I had more and more of a growing desire to really be writing music originally, you know, and I could kind of see the path that we were on with CDZA. And, you know, with anything, especially with YouTube, though, once you build an audience for a specific thing, that's what you do. Yeah. You know, it's very, very difficult to try to pivot out of that. And so it kind of just felt like a natural stopping point, because I was starting to get a lot of opportunities to write original music and to play original music. And we were very proud of everything that we did with CDZA. And so we sort of thought we could continue on and do this like in a more formulaic way, you know, and sort of make it a little more official and just kind of do it and capitalize off of the brand of it. Or we could just take the sort of artistic high road, I think is how we looked at it, and just say, this was amazing, and let's not like tarnish this. Mm-hmm. All of those videos will be there forever. Let's just hit the pause button. And if in the air, like that energy actually comes back and we actually all want to get back together to do it, I think the videos would be incredible again. But we just didn't want to start churning them out like a factory, you know. I think the magic would have disappeared.
Yeah, that sounds like the brave choice. The choice that, you know, anything with some momentum like that takes some reflection to make a decision like that. But what a cool, you know, the next phase of your career, you know, again, a different direction, but super cool. So writing for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then many other things. And then on top of all that, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that was, who knows? Yeah.
So you just talk about that you mentioned how the gig sort of, how you got the connection for the gig, but what was it like playing that gig? You were writing as well as doing that?
Yeah.
That was both happening at the same time?
Both happening at the same time. Yeah. That was an amazing experience. I mean, I think on a personal level, the thing that was so fun about it was just playing in such a big outlet, like on such a visible platform with these people that I'd known since I was 18. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Eddie Barbash, the saxophone player, I met him when he was 17. You know, and he came to school, and I was, you know, 2 years. All the rest of us were 2 years older than him. So I've known these people for the majority of my life, or certainly the most formative years of my life. And so that was really, on a personal level, the craziest and funnest part of it all, was just to look around and be like, wow, like none of us ever thought that this would be happening when we were 18. Or maybe we did, but not exactly like this, you know? Right. And so that was really amazing. But then, of course, you know, just seeing how a TV show works was incredibly enlightening. And to see how you put together a show like that. I mean, Stephen himself described it as like a crazy blindfolded, like bobsled ride or something, I think he said, because it's every night you're basically creating a Broadway show from scratch every single night. I mean, the script is written in the morning because the current events are changing all the time. And so the writing team is just working so intensely. I don't know how they do it. I mean, they're brilliant people. And then you have all of these skits and all of these guests that are coming on and all of these songs that need to be played and the lighting and everything. And it all has to happen. And it all truly is live. I mean, they can edit it and they might edit it a little bit between the shooting and when it's broadcast. But for the most part, it's truly live, you know. So that was amazing to see all of that. And then I also got to play with some heroes, you know. I got to play with James Taylor. I got to play with Yo-Yo Ma. A lot of people, Willie Nelson. We got to meet Wolfpack, who's one of my favorite bands that's out on the scene now. And that was when they were kind of first starting out. They came on the show to play, and those guys are amazing. So there was a lot of really cool things that happened around it, you know. But yeah, I was writing the whole time while all that was happening. And so that was the main reason why I felt like after about a year and a half, it was time to really kind of focus on that. There's only so many hours in the day, which I've painfully learned, you know. I really wish it wasn't like that. But I had a couple commissions in the theater world that I really cared about, and one of them was going up at that time. And it was just physically, like truly physically impossible to be in all of those places at the same time. And it was sort of the thing with CDZA is I felt like, you know, this is great, but there's a lot more that I really want to try to get done and pursue. And it was a similar type of situation. You know, I just sort of felt like this is amazing, but I don't know if I'd be able to wake up at, 40 and be really happy, if doing this, you know what I mean? And I feel like there's more adventures to be had. So, and that was really scary too. I think honestly, in a lot of ways that was scarier than leaving CDZA. But it was definitely, there's never been a day where I felt like it wasn't the right decision. I'm really thrilled by everything that's happening now. And none of it would have been able to happen because it was a very demanding schedule. You're in the studio every day for the bulk of the day. It was a very full-time job in that way, which is also something that I wasn't really expecting when I originally took it. I thought I'd talked to Will Lee, and he was sort of like, yeah, it's great. Like we show up for a couple hours a day. And I'm sure that the Late Show now will get to a place where their production is that honed. But, starting a show like that, it's like we were there 10 hours a day, sometimes 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I think it's better. I talk to the guys now and I think it's more manageable even now, but, it was just too much. It was too much of a commitment. You know?
It doesn't leave a lot of time for writing.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I tried. I would wake up really early, 7 or 8, and get up and try to actually have like 2 hours at the keyboard, like writing and working. But it's just impossible, and that's, I do still try to be that disciplined about it, but it's impossible. Like it was just too much because then you come home at the end of the day and you're completely shot. You think you're going to write, but you're drained. You got to go to bed,
Well, it's that delicate nature of creativity, I think. And like even if you think with the best of intentions trying to get in some time, creativity can be an elusive thing. And this episode is brought to you by the Bass Violin Shop, which opened in 2001 as a small double bass workshop in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, they're staffed by 3 full-time, highly skilled bass luthiers, and they specialize in double bass sales, rentals, setup, restoration, and repair. For nearly 20 years, they have satisfied thousands of clients by offering quality instruments, knowledgeable service, reliable repairs, and superior restorations at affordable prices. They're always happy to assess basses for trade-in, consignment, or even purchasing outright. Contact them to schedule a time to discuss your bass and your future needs. For more information and current inventory, visit their website at bassviolinshop.com and be sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Whenever anybody's going to the Midwest, and I lived in Chicago, Illinois for years and years, I tell them to go to A440. If they're looking for a bow, if they're looking for a bass, if they need some repairs done, if they have a student who's looking for an instrument, A440 has been serving the community for years and years. They're located just west of Wrigley Field in beautiful Chicago. They do great work, and they've been a big supporter of bass events over the years, whether it's the Chicago Bass Festival or really any bass event. A440, you guys rock. Check them out at a440violinshop.com. When you've built a reputation like Upton Bass has, the stakes are so high when you send out an instrument to a new owner.
When people open that crate, man, the bar is so high. It doesn't matter if it's a $2,000 laminate bass or it's a $20,000 one-off. The bar is so high. Maybe because of the amount of time we've been doing it, the awards on the wall, the gossip, the reputation, the marketing. But by the time they're opening their crate, they're invested so much into us. They're expecting the world, and we have to meet that expectation every single time.
That's Eric Roy of Upton Bass, and boy, do they meet those expectations that people set. Yes, the bar is high, but it's high because of the quality of work they've done over the years. They stand behind their products, and they have so many loyal fans, including me. Check them out at uptonbass.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. I love talking to people who compose, just about the process, because I'm fascinated by like how people structure their time, whether they start at the keyboard and move to something else. In terms of your writing, like do you get up at the same time every day and go to the keyboard? Does it come to you in bursts, or a commission's coming and do you go into a mad panic 3 weeks before? Like what's your process look like?
It's, it kind of is all of those things.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, I think the only consistency is that my brain is always going all the time. Like my phone literally shuts down from storage from all of the voice memos. Like I'm constantly, like I did one on the way here. Just anytime anything comes to mind, I'll sing it into my phone. Okay. And so I'm always kind of stockpiling the ideas, and sometimes they're just ideas like bursts of an idea, but most of the time it's like a project that I'm working on, and there's a couple problems in a song or in a scene or in a movement that I don't know what to do about, and so I'll just be thinking about that problem subconsciously, and throughout the day something will just randomly, I'll be in line getting a coffee or something and just boom, and so I'll sing that into my phone, and then I think the majority of the work for me, the actual sitting down at the piano and like making the demo or making the score in Sibelius, or solving the problems of the orchestration, that all comes once creatively. I have a really strong I don't just sit down and like dream, you know what I mean? I usually am just dreaming, like walking around and moving, like in life, So that I would say is the mysterious part of the process that actually for me doesn't work if I'm just like sitting in a chair. I have to be kind of moving around and like living, and something will randomly inspire me. But then the actual like brass tacks of getting it down, or especially like with a piece for orchestra, there's so many moving parts, obviously. So there's like just real tangible problems sometimes that need to be solved with the texture or with the notation or whatever, or in like a development section of a piece where it's not necessarily always the most creative part of the piece. It's like you already have all of the big creative strokes, like an amazing theme and an amazing, B theme and an amazing musical idea. All the fun stuff is kind of done. And now you just really technically have to figure out how this is going to come together at certain points in the music. All of that stuff, I would say, depends on a deadline. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I try to be responsible with it, like I'll try to pace it out. And in that point of the process, I will be very regimented. I'll try to sit down every day for this amount of time at this time, but it doesn't always work that way. Like this last week, I was in a session with Lauren for the whole week, teaching for a day. And then next week, today actually, I'm headed out of town to work on this song cycle and do a little performance of it. And so all of that's happening at the same time. Like I'm trying to keep my bass chops together for the recording session, but I also did the arrangements for it. So I'm bringing the charts in, trying to make sure I'm prepared to teach the class on Thursday, and so in a week like that, like I can't sit down at the exact same time to write every day, so it's a little more in bursts. It's a little more chaotic. Mm-hmm. I'll just sort of slam it in wherever I can, but not every week is like that, and so on weeks where it's different, I try to be very careful about scheduling the time so that I can have like sort of office hours with writing,
But your phone is your collection device, and those
Yes.
those ideas are just marinating, and they're coming to you throughout the. You're walking, you're getting coffee, and that's how that starts. That's interesting.
If I lost the phone, I would be gone. I wouldn't even exist as a person anymore.
A common theme on the podcast, and something people ask a lot about, is how things are changing, the people who are creating their own careers, musical entrepreneurship, all that kind of good stuff. You're a shining example of somebody who has really, created their own path in all these different ways. You've kind of had multiple careers at this point, any one of which most people would be thrilled to have be their life's work. And I think it's so cool you're teaching this class too about that.
Yeah.
So, First of all, they should go take Michael's class. That would be the best thing to do. But for those
come recruiting for NYU.
Exactly. But if they can't come to NYU and take the class, maybe talk to some of the 18-year-olds out there, or the 19, 20-year-olds starting their undergrad in bass performance or whatever. Not everybody's going to probably have the interest or ability or wherewithal to create a massively popular YouTube channel, or maybe they're not a composer. But just talk about opportunities in general, creating your own opportunities, which you obviously have some great experience with.
Yeah. Okay. So 18 or 19-year-old bass player out there, I'm talking directly to you. Okay. I think that finding your own way and doing the entrepreneurial approach to your career is a very beautiful thing. I also will be very real with you, and I will say those buzzwords of, innovation and entrepreneurship are very nice sounding. The reality is very cold and very harsh. And that's not to discourage you. I mean, I am still on that path and probably always will be. But that's because I truly am that. That's truly who I am. I'm very interested, and creativity is a priority for me in my life. And as a result of that, there's other areas of my life where there's sacrifices that are made, and I don't have the comfort or the benefits of taking another approach to your career. And so I think if you really want to do it, if you really feel like you have something inside of you that is very important and it really needs to come out, and you really need to go after it, and you really need to see what it is, then there's nothing more beautiful. And congratulations, and I support you, and you'll probably find a lot of other people that support you too, because passion is sadly a very rare thing in the world. But I also think, just remember that it's very, very hard. It's not, if you have any other priorities other than creativity, do those, don't do it unless you really, really want to, because there's a lot of moments where you'll really be just out on a limb, and you'll really be like, wow, like, how did I get myself into this situation? And if you care about it, you'll write your way back out of it, and it'll be amazing, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart, so I would say that's sort of another way of saying, really, whatever the thing is that you feel like you would be so unhappy dying having not done, do that. And that might be having a family, or having a job where where the next check is coming, or it might be trying to start a YouTube channel. Like, it doesn't matter what that is. There's glory and an incredible amount of dignity in all of it, but I don't think any of it'll work unless it's like what you really, really want to be doing, and the world needs plenty of great business people and great social entrepreneurs and great non-for-profit folks and great doctors. The bass will always be with you if you decide you don't really want to do that, and if you do, I'll see you out there, and I will support you and cherish you and be thankful that you're contributing to the art,
There's a lot of unglamorous hustle behind the scenes. A bass player named Peter Seymour, Project Trio, their group in.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, so Peter,
he's a great bass player.
He's a heck of a bass player.
Wow,
he and I were talking.
That group is amazing.
Oh, I know. Well, we were talking about the launch of that group, and he came up with a list of, I believe it was 3,000 venues that Project Trio could play, and he reached out to each one of those, and I think he got a response of, 5 people.
Out of 3,000.
3,000. So just picture, calling on the phone, sending emails, and just nothing, just that brutal, like, gaping void of silence. Yeah, I think about that often, and then but it worked. You know what? 5 people did get in touch, and then the next year there were 9, and the next year there were 15, and then it grows.
Yes.
But there's a lot of, without that passion and without that drive, or maybe it's a hard road to hoe for sure.
Yeah, but that is a great point. On the optimistic side of it is that it's not rocket science. Like, that's the thing that I always say. It's like, if you really decide you want to do something, it's not rocket science. Like, you will probably do it. It's just it takes a lot of work, and the work can be very discouraging unless you really see the point of it. You really see like a bigger picture. But if you decided you wanted to start a trio, or if you decided you wanted to be the first person to play bass hanging upside down from, some wild contraption. I mean, you could find a way to do that and do it at a high level. You really could, but it would just probably be pretty bleak in the beginning, and that's the part that the passion is really important for, and if you're like me, I mean, and you're totally nuts, I mean, I that's the part I actually kind of like. I almost kind of get bored once it's all like going good. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm sort of like, well, where's the challenge? Where's the struggle in this? Where's the birthing of something new,
Right. Shaking it up.
Yeah.
Jimmy Iovine, I remember watching there's this great documentary of Jimmy and Dr. Dre, and he was talking to one of his colleagues and he said, your life is just like this, like a straight line. He's like, you need more of this. And he like made this like crazy diagonal, like shaking, but yeah, shaking it up is a beautiful thing. And it's really cool to see you be what seems to be tremendously successful, and then to have the courage to change directions and then go find something new. It's growth and change and development are a beautiful thing, and it's really really cool.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say, and I agree. That's what I'm passionate about. That's my thing.
Yeah. Michael Thurber. Wow. MichaelThurber.org.
Yeah, I'm a .org.
You're a .org. I also have a .org. That's a good thing.
That is.
Appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you taking the time and chatting. And thanks.
Oh man,
thanks
likewise.
So much.
It was great to meet you. I'm a fan of the podcast. So.
Oh man,
yeah,
it's great. Michael, thank you so much for talking with me. How cool to meet you in person, and you're just the nicest guy imaginable. Folks, learn more about everything he's up to and he's done in his what's actually kind of been a not too long career so far, but it's just incredible, the breadth of his work and just how inspiring it is to me. It's so inspiring. Anyway, the website is michaelthurber.org. And thanks again to Lyris Hung of D'Addario Strings for setting this up. It was great to chat live, great to chat in the D'Addario showroom in Manhattan. That was a cool experience. And I also went out to Long Island where the factory is and got a tour of the place. Very cool. I'm writing up a blog post, which is probably out by this point, about that. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, D'Addario. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you so much for tuning into this. The reason why we do these is for you, and I get so much out of it as well, but it's just so inspiring to hear from people all over the world that listen to this. And if you want to reach out wherever you are in the world and let me know a little bit about yourself or how you discovered the podcast or who you'd like to hear on it or what kind of bass you play on or whatever you like to share, feedback at contrabassconversations.com will put you in touch with me. And I read and respond to every single message that I get, and I just love hearing from people. So it'd be great to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, maybe this is your first episode, or maybe you've been listening for a while, but you just haven't pulled the trigger on the subscription. It's free, by the way. Go to contrabassconversations.com/subscribe, and that'll get you set up with whatever option works best for you. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. If you're looking for a bass, Mitch is making beautiful basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You can learn more at his website, mitchmooring.com. Thank you also to Krista Copper, who's archiving and cataloging and categorizing all the topics we talk about. Super valuable for projects going forward. So thank you to Krista and the whole team. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.